Good morning, everyone. It's Sandy with Animal Education and Rescue, and I am so glad to be with you this morning. This is our once a month, all about dogs, dog training tips, advice, and behavior. So I hope we get some people on board here to hopefully teach you a few things about dogs, answer some questions, and all of that good stuff. I see Sean is on. Hi, Sean. We'll give it a few minutes. Let's see who comes on board. And today is September 8th. It is 9:15 in the morning. And it is a kind of overcast and windy day, but it's not raining, although it kind of looks like it might rain. And but it's still nice enough. Everybody can get out and go for a nice walk or a bike ride or a run or a hike or whatever you want to do, and bring your dog with. It's a perfect day to bring your dog with because it's not too hot and it's not too cold. So, and dogs love walks. So if you have a fenced-in backyard, take the opportunity today to take your dog for a walk. Dogs love to go for walks. Well, maybe not all of them, but most love to go for walks because they get to explore and smell all the amazing smells that their very sensitive noses can handle, and that's so exciting for them. So let's just give it a minute and see who comes on board. In the meantime, I will pan over so you can take a quick peek at the dogs that are with me in the trailer. Hang on. We're going to move this over. You get to see the dogs. There they are. There is Summer and there is Cubby. And they are enjoying just chilling out in the office, taking their morning nap. They have had a very busy day so far. Very active. They're both about 2 years old, so they are young, rambunctious puppies and need lots of exercise. But you can see, I don't know if you can see, but Summer's eyes are like literally drifting closed as you're looking at her. So she's just falling asleep, and Cubby, it looks like he's fast asleep with a nylabone tucked under his chin. Cubby loves his nylabones. So I'm going to pan back over so you can see my face again. Here we are. And we'll give it one more minute and see who comes on. Sometimes people are running a little bit late. And again, everybody, I apologize in advance if I look like I'm looking around at things. I am. It's because, again, I'm in a newer format. Doing this from my phone, and from my computer. So I am just getting used to how this looks, but it's so much better, I think, and I think you'll probably agree with me on that it looks better. You could see a wider screen, and I don't have to hold the camera, so it's wonderful. Hi, Kathy. Thanks for joining me. And so let's give it one more minute. And today, let me just turn my phone on silent. It is on silent. Awesome. So today I have some things I want to talk about. Here's my paper. Okay. There's two topics I want to discuss that I think affects most people. Actually, I know it does, whether it's your dogs or it's just a dog you see either in passing, a neighbor's dog, a friend's dog, a relative's dog, or whatever, is called leash aggression. Leash aggression. We're going to talk about that today. And we're going to talk about the differences between male and female dogs, which is kind of an interesting topic, because if you have a dog, and I'm assuming you do or you did, otherwise you probably would not be on this live, is that you have either chosen a male or a female dog. And there's some kind of interesting similarities between the sexes that I'd love to share with you as well, and then see if I can answer any questions for you. Would be amazing. too. And hopefully I can answer questions. If I can't, I'll let you know for sure. Okay, so let's get started. It is now 9:19, and if anyone shows up late, they can rewind. We like that old-fashioned term. They can watch from the beginning to see the beginning of the live. So we'll start from here. So let's talk about leash aggression first with dogs. Now, what does leash aggression mean? Well, the term typically means a dog that barks, lunges, snaps, acts obnoxious when they're on leash, when they see other dogs. It's a dog situation. So it's leash aggression. That term is used when a dog is acting aggressive on leash with another dog, okay? It is an extremely common phenomenon, and so I want to touch on that, and I think it's an important topic. I'll start out by telling you a story. So I've been training dogs since about 1990, and by the way, I will have a disclaimer right here, is that everything you're going to hear about today is my opinion on dog training, and everybody has their own opinion. I am not a radical one way or the other. I'm not a traditional trainer, and I'm not a force-free trainer or total positive reinforcement trainer. I'm somewhere in between, and you can take what I say as golden, or you can dismiss what I say, or research it yourself. I encourage you to form your own opinion on anything that I talk about today. But I will say that I have been working with dogs since about 1990 or so. It's a long time already. If I don't look old enough, thank you very much for training that young. I actually started on my own dog when I was a teenager, and then I was fascinated with dog behavior, and so I started working under a trainer named Linda. No, was her name Linda? Now I can't remember. It's so many years ago. I think it was Linda. Anyway, and training at that time was very different. It was just as training our children or raising our children is different today than it was back in the early 1990s. So a lot has changed since then. But when I first decided to become a dog trainer, I did a lot of training underneath some more experienced trainers, and then I took some seminars and classes, and then I started working with dogs through my other company, Pet Sitters of America, and then segued into owning my own company called Compassionate Dog Training. And so back then, up until 2003, basically I handpicked the dogs that I wanted to do training for. Most of my dog training clients came from people that were using my pet sitting service or were in a certain demographic kind of marketing where a lot of people had dogs they got from a breeder or never had any issues or were not rescue animals or had minimal issues. So a lot of what I dealt with from about 1990 until 2003 were your very typical, like, normal behavior issues. For instance, housebreaking and jumping and counter surfing and being a little bit shy, being a little bit iffy with other dogs, but no like severe behavior issues or aggression. At that time, there really wasn't a lot available. This is before the internet, so there wasn't really a lot available as far as teaching me about dog aggression per se. And I work best by doing. So it actually worked best for me at that time to work with animals that I had worked with in my other career, if that makes any sense. So in 2003, when I started Animal Education and Rescue, within the first year, I got a dog in my care. Her name was Holly, and she was probably a Keyshawn, maybe Collie mix. And she went into a foster home, but before she went into a foster home, I had some experience with her and spent some time with her, and whenever she would see another dog, she would lunge and bark like a lunatic on leash. And I had no experience with leash aggression. I didn't even know what it was necessarily. I mean, I had seen dogs act like that, but I had no experience on actually training dogs not to behave that way. And so I told the foster mom, I can't remember her name, so many years ago, but I told her that the dog is probably not good with other dogs and that she should keep the dog separated. That was my, advice to her. In any case, she was bold enough, this woman, way bolder than I would have been, that she decided she actually had dogs of her own and she didn't want to have to keep them separated. So she had a fenced-in backyard and she let her dogs out, and then she brought Holly out on leash, and then she literally unsnapped the leash. And she told me this later when I talked to her, and I was like, oh, why did you do that? I thought, oh my goodness. Well, she said that Holly was absolutely fine with her dogs off leash. And she said, I'm telling you, all you have to do is snap off the leash and the dog's fine. And I was like, that's crazy. Wow. Who would have thought that, and it really got me thinking, because I wouldn't have even thought to try that, because I'm very, very conservative and I want to be really careful that there's not any dog fights and that kind of thing. And that set me on a road of real curiosity, and times were changing by then. And of course there was internet and there were more seminars available and there was online information. And so I started studying leash aggression a little bit more seriously. And I got a dog in my care that her name was Carmen, and Carmen had a lot of leash aggression, and so I started seeking more information from experienced trainers that dealt with that kind of thing. Okay, so what I have learned throughout the years is that teaching a dog that is a leash aggression not to act aggressive on leash is a difficult road. I have tried everything from total positive reinforcement training, which basically means that when a dog sees another dog, before they react, you praise good behavior. And the theory is that when the dog makes eye contact or notices the other dog, let's say the dog you're walking that's leash aggressive sees another dog, and the dog, before it reacts negatively, you praise the behavior. So the concept is that over time and slowly making the space closer and closer to each other, that you teach this dog that seeing other dogs is actually a good thing, and good behavior gets rewarded with treats. So, so the theory is great, and it makes a lot of sense. And I had that one dog, Carmen, that I worked with literally day after day, week after week for a couple, 2 or 3 months, where I worked with her on this leash aggression, because she had actually attacked another dog viciously, and the dog needed surgery and almost died because of her attack. So I was motivated to change her behavior. The amount of hours I spent with her every day, it was at least 2 or 3 hours a day for at least a couple months. And I worked on nothing but positive reinforcement training based on some advice I had gotten from positive reinforcement trainers. And I was really, really happy with the results at the time, but I was still cautious. I still, as far as her having one-on-one contact with other dogs on leash or off leash, especially smaller dogs, was very, very controlled. Needless to say, Carmen got adopted to a family that had an invisible fence. And I was very clear with them that having an invisible fence with Carmen is not a good idea, and they actually promised me that they would walk her instead on leash. Well, they didn't do that, and Carmen blew the fence and actually attacked a little dog and hurt it very badly. They ended up rehoming Carmen to a relative. So I was really upset about the whole scenario for many, many reasons. I had spent hours upon hours with Carmen trying to work with her, and it really got me to reevaluate logically positive reinforcement training with a dog that behaves that way, that has leash aggression and inevitably had small dog aggression, is that First of all, the amount of training that I did with her as a trainer myself, for me to ask a dog training client to spend the amount of hours and the time and the months that I spent working with Carmen and being so diligent to not, have her in situations that could compromise another dog and so forth, is totally unrealistic for the average person. So even if it had worked, and it didn't, because there's human beings involved. And that's the thing that everybody needs to understand, is that we are all human beings. We are all flawed. None of us are perfect. All of us make mistakes, and every dog is different, and how they react to things and everything is different as well. So there is no one way for a dog. Okay, so what I found from my experience, and then I had also around that same time frame had worked with other foster homes and other clients using the approach of positive reinforcement training. Besides Carmen was only one story during that period of time where I was trying to do nothing but positive reinforcement training. And what I was finding is that it was completely unrealistic, that most people did not have the time or devotion or dedication to, and hours necessary and safety measures in place to be able to do that. That was the conclusion that I came to after many years of trying that in many situations, and I did not have a lot of really great success with it for all of those reasons. So with leash aggression, first of all, I'll mention a couple things, because is that, first of all, every dog, as I said, is different, and you'll hear me say that a million times in a row. Every owner is different. How the dog and the owner interact with each other is different. Every environment is different. Every situation is different. I mean, I could go on and on. You could have someone that lives in the country and they like to walk their dog in the country on leash. They're not going to see a lot of other dogs. You can have suburban dogs that live in neighborhoods, and you see dogs on walks. You can live in the city and pass dogs all the time as you're walking the sidewalks of a city. So you have different situations and different necessities to have the dog not behave like a lunatic on leash. And so, giving that dog the opportunity to make the right decisions when it comes to acting like an idiot on leash or acting well behaved, that's a challenge in itself. So when training a dog, regardless of the training style you use, you have to be able to set the dog up that has this leash aggression with enough dogs walking different directions to be able to practice techniques. So, and certainly it makes the most amount of sense if you can supply the non-reactive dogs to work with your dog on the training methods. Again, okay, who has 10 or 15 non-reactive dogs that you can then practice with your dog on positive reinforcement or some redirecting or whatever you're doing. Also, leash aggression takes many different forms and it looks different with every dog. Some dogs have mild leash aggression, some have severe leash aggression, and there's everything in between. And it's getting a matter of getting to know your dog. Sometimes when you walk a dog, if you first, let's say, adopt a dog and it has the leash aggression, sometimes it rectifies itself just by walking your dog consistently in the neighborhood, and the dog seeing other dogs and seeing that it's not going to get hurt, that nothing bad's going to happen, it doesn't have to protect you or itself, and over time it just kind of dissipates on its own. Other times it doesn't. Sometimes it manifests itself worse as the dog gets more comfortable in the home. So again, every situation is different. So you're saying to me, Sandy, why are we talking about this if every situation is different? It's because we need to have the understanding that there is no easy answer for any one thing, regardless of whether it's leash aggression, whether it's housebreaking issues, whether it's a dog not good with strangers, a dog not good with other dogs, a dog having separation anxiety. Everything has a different level, a different person, a different dog. okay? So, but what I will tell you is that not only can sometimes it dissipate on its own, also you want to really be mindful of the energy that you have during the time that you're walking your dog, and making sure that you are nice and relaxed and that you're not feeding into the frenzy. So, which is a really hard thing for me to tell you to do, because of course I don't blame you. I can see why it would get pretty stressful if you see your dog lunging on leash. So what I have found to be the most effective, and not even great, but what I found to be pretty effective, is using a combination of different techniques. So using positive reinforcement whenever possible. In other words, your dog sees another dog across the street and it's behaving really nice. Make sure every time you possibly can to reinforce that behavior and really remind your dog of how really special they are and how happy you are that they're behaving the way they're behaving. Making sure that you get the dog at that moment that it is behaving properly, and you praise and treat the behavior. So it has to be spontaneous and immediate. Okay, it can't, like, you can't be slow or delayed in giving praise. So make sure you do that. Sometimes redirecting your dog, in other words, sometimes that'll work if they're not totally charged up. So redirecting your dog is being able to move in a different direction. Sometimes that would work. And sometimes traditional training, where we tell our dogs that this is not acceptable, is appropriate. And again, you have to know your dog and then know the situation. So like traditional training would be telling your dog no and putting your dog in a sit and making your dog sit, and then assuming the dog's not totally bonkers, because if the dog's totally bonkers, it's not going to sit for you. So let's just say the dog's not totally bonkers. The dog sits for you and you say stay, and then you feed the dog treats. In a moment, you got to give that space and time from a correction to a reward. Okay, that is key, by the way, with everything that we do. Is like, for instance, if our dog jumps on us, okay, it jumps on us and we say off and we tell our dog to sit. We don't want to have the dog jump, tell the dog to sit, and then give the dog a treat. Instead, you want, if the dog jumps on you, you say sit. You give it a nice long pause so that there's a space and time between the bad behavior and the good behavior, and then praise your dog. So make sure that there's a space and time between the bad behavior and the good behavior, because otherwise, if there isn't, then you'll end up teaching your dog, if I jump and I sit, I get a treat. So then you're actually teaching them jump, sit, treat. Okay, so be careful that there's always like these pregnant pauses between, or a few seconds between a bad behavior and a good behavior. Okay, sometimes if you use certain harnesses, or a head harness, or a slip lead that gives you more control, will sometimes help in training a dog that has leash aggression. I know Cesar Milan, I occasionally watch his program. It's fascinating. It's totally edited, and you all know that, right? So, you know, and every dog is different, and they edit what they want to edit and give you the information they want to give you. But I find it interesting, his technique in the dog aggression and how he handles it. And I have tried his technique as well and found it to be moderately successful, but definitely not completely successful either. And again, it's because every dog is different, every person is different, and being consistent is very difficult for most people. So anyway, now I'm going to take a break for a second from talking, simply to see if anybody has any questions about leash aggression that I can try to answer. Any questions? And I see that Dory is on. Hi, Dory. And I see Janet is on. And they both said hello. Hello, both of you. I'm so glad you joined me. So as you can see, leash aggression is a complicated issue. Sometimes it's not solvable. Actually, I would say oftentimes it's not solvable. And so nowadays, now I've been training dogs for so long, if somebody contacts me and wants me to do training with their dog because their dog has leash aggression, to be honest with you, I won't even take the job, because I just don't think I'm going to be successful enough. And because of all those reasons I told you. And so sometimes I think we just have to accept that our dogs are a certain way, and, you know, and that we just avoid people when we go for walks. Certainly, I'll mention a couple other quick things for you too, more on the traditional training side, is that certainly if you just have one dog you're walking, you can use the air compressor thing, where it's like a, here, let me look it up. I always forget the name of it. Hold on one second. It's a red bottle. Okay. And it just compresses air. Here it is. Pet corrector. So here, let me see. Let me get this up for you. And by the way, I had these positive, or these force-free trainers that I've now banned from my site simply because they are very aggressive with their viewpoints of what I'm going to mention now. And so if you don't agree with using a pet corrector, which is right here, this is a pet corrector. Here, let me just put it closer so you can see what I'm talking about. There it is. Okay, that's a pet corrector. And it just makes, it's a sound of air, like that. And with some dogs, that gets a dog to be startled into not doing the bad behavior anymore. Of course, if you want more than one dog with you and the one dog is not behaving inappropriately, but the other one is, then you're actually punishing both dogs, which is not great. Another thing you can use is a squirt bottle to squirt the dog when it behaves that way. You can also use a can with pennies in it to shake at the dog, not at the dog's face and not throw it at the dog or whatever, but you can certainly shake it to kind of scare the dog a little bit. Again, force-free trainers think I'm evil for saying that, and you know, that's their opinion. I can tell you that, like I said in the beginning of this, is that I am a girl that believes that there are all shades of gray, that nothing is black and white, no situation is the same, no animal, no person, and so we must work with what we have, and you know, and work from there and what we're comfortable with. Okay, you know what, I'm sorry, I apologize everyone, but I forgot that I have to scroll down to see questions. So here, let's see. I see Jennifer says, hi Sandy, I'm lucky to not experience any real leash aggression, but my dog does bark at other dogs pretty consistently, especially if they are on a leash and walking towards us. Do you have any general strategies to decrease barking at others' dogs pass by? That's actually what I'm talking about with leash aggression. Leash aggression is a general term, and that's for a dog that behaves like what you're describing. People will assume or make the assumption that it's aggression when it's really not. It's just a dog overly hyper or overly excitable when they see another dog. And so just what I was just mentioning a minute ago about using either the pet corrector or a squirt bottle or a can with pennies, or you can have your dog and sit and stay and offer treats if the dog is behaving properly. That would be more on the positive reinforcement side. Those would be some of the things that I would recommend. And as I said, kind of throughout this, is that it is a very difficult thing to correct, and you have to do things consistently, whatever techniques you decide works well for your dog. I would suggest doing it, making sure you do it consistently so it creates a new habit. And make sure always, everybody, is that when your dog is behaving properly, take those moments of opportunity to praise your dog. And there's nothing wrong with using treats. Treats are awesome because it reinforces good behavior and it helps the dog to much more quickly be able to be accepting of new behavior. So definitely shower them with treats as often as you want. Obviously, if you're working on some behavior issue that is pretty severe and you're using a lot of treats, make sure that you feed them a little less of the next meal, because you don't want to end up with a very fat dog over time. So hopefully, Jennifer, that helped you a little, and I would definitely encourage you to watch this live from the beginning, so maybe you'll get some more tips as well. I see Janet says, do you understand why they jump at trucks? Oh, good question. So dogs actually that jump at trucks, they are, in at least my assessment or analyzing of it, is that they are trying to control that truck. They're trying to herd that truck. I would assume that a dog that is lunging and jumping at trucks are dogs that genetically are predisposed for herding, herding small like rodents or herding cattle or whatever, and so they feel a sense of being out of control when a truck goes by and scares them, and so they figure if they lunge and jump at trucks that they will have more control, which of course we know that is not the case. They're not going to have any more control. What I would suggest in that case is, if you can anticipate the truck coming down the road, is that put your dog in a sit-stay, praise the behavior, give the dog a treat, every time that you pass by a truck. Obviously, if you live in a city or a place where there's lots of trucks that go past, you might not get more than a block or two because you're constantly having the dog sit, stay, and praise for trucks passing by. And it may not be a logical decision for you. You can also redirect your dog by taking a treat and putting it in front of their nose and pulling it away from where the truck is coming and having the dog in a sit. So you're shaping your dog into a sit position away from the truck. So that would be another option for you. But that would be my reasoning why dogs jump at trucks. So I hope that answered your question. Linda says, I don't have a question so much as a comment. We had 4 terriers, but we've noticed after our little boy terrier, who was very leash aggressive, passed, our 3 girls are not acting like idiots anymore when they're on walks. Excellent observation, Linda. So important to understand is that dogs feed off each other in a good way and not a good way. And if a dog is loud and obnoxious, they are going to stress out the rest of the pack, and actually that does make sense. It really does. You can have one dog that behaves absolutely inappropriately and can cause everybody to behave inappropriately, or be at least, at the very least, be nervous and uncomfortable because they don't understand what the dog is so upset about. Whenever you have more than 2 dogs, congratulations, you now have a pack. And the pack mentality is very different than just having 1 or 2 dogs. So once you get past the 2 dog amount, when you start to have 3 or more dogs, you are creating a pack, and the way that they have to be handled behaviorally is different than when you have just 1 or 2 dogs. And it becomes much more complicated and much more challenging. So I'm just giving you that bit of advice in general for all of you that have packs of dogs, or if you're thinking about getting a 3rd dog, really make sure that you're up for the challenge. And I'm not saying not to do it, because frankly, I have more than 2 dogs, and I find, well, now it's ridiculous. Now I have to, obviously I run a humane society, so I foster a lot of animals, but I can tell you that I found it really fascinating to watch how they find the pecking order between them, and who's the top dog, who's the middle, who's the lowest, and how they communicate with each other and talk to each other through their body language and through their vocal tones. I find it absolutely fascinating. So, but just, word of caution to anyone that has more than 2 dogs. So Linda says, I am of the opinion that whenever you introduce a new pet to your family, or a pet leaves your family, it changes the dynamics of your households. Sometimes this results in better behavior across all, and sometimes, absolutely, Linda, absolutely, when you introduce a new pet to a family, or a pet leaves your family. And I think anyone that fosters animals will agree with you 100%, because we that foster regularly have that experience on a consistent, ongoing basis. And actually, that's why oftentimes I lose foster homes, because it's too stressful for them to deal with the dynamics that happen between the new dog that is there and their current dogs, and that they don't want to disrupt the relationship that their dog has in their household to them or to the other dogs by putting another dog temporarily into the home. It's not for everybody, and certainly the dynamics do change. So for those fostering out there, they're really animal warriors big time, because they are consistently seeing the changes happening in their homes as the dogs come and go from their home. But of course, if they continue to do it, they see the big picture and they see the value that fostering brings. But yes, you are absolutely right. So I'm not seeing any other questions here as far as the leash aggression. Hopefully that helped give you a better picture. So if you have a dog like that and you've tried everything I've suggested, you know, certainly you can try to work with a trainer and see if you can make it better, but do understand that whatever trainer you use or whatever methods you use, it has to be done consistently over a long period of time. There is absolutely no quick fix. And it's a process, and it may or may not work. You may try one thing and it may not work, and you may have to try another thing. And oftentimes people call me and they want a quick fix. They have a laundry list of things that they want their dog to do. They don't want their dog to pull on leash. They want their dog to not jump on people. They don't want their dog to bark at other dogs on leash. They want their dog to behave perfectly in the house and not to jump on counters or steal things. They have all this laundry list of things they want done, and they basically want me to come out there and wave a magic wand and say, okay, dog is fixed. It doesn't work that way. It is a process, and some things are solvable, and some things just need to be managed, and some you just have to deal with. And for instance, a dog that jumps on counters, that's not always fixable. It's just not, because more often than not, that dog is jumping on the counters when you're not looking, with your back turned or whatever. And so I tell people, I say, save yourself some money from me coming out, and don't leave things on counters. It's terrible, but eventually you'll get to the point where the dog's too old to jump on counters. You know, and I don't mean to sound cynical or difficult, but I can tell you to correct that behavior would take utmost consistency and different training techniques. The better thing to do is just to not leave food on counters, is actually, you know, the easiest solution. Okay, so Dory says, even if you add one cat, it completely changes the household dynamics and it takes months for them to adjust. Possibly. It depends, again, Dory, it depends on the animals. Again, this is all about dog training, but if you're talking about adding a pet into the home, whether it's a rabbit, a cat, another dog, or whatever, yes, it does absolutely change the dynamics of a house. And it could potentially take months and months for the adjustment, and people need to understand that. If they don't, and they're not willing to, you know, to deal with the adjustment and know that it's long-term, my suggestion would be not to get the animal. Do not get another animal if you're not willing to deal with the months and months potentially it would take for the animals to adjust. Or you could have it where they adjust immediately. I took in a cat, it was a young adult cat, into our care, and the cat actually, his name was Caesar. He went into a foster home right away. Long story short, the family was going to adopt Caesar, and then they changed their mind within 24 hours, or maybe it was 48 hours, because Caesar was not getting along with their cat or their dog. And I had explained to them that it could take months and months for the dog and the cat to get along, and the cats to get along with each other. Needless to say, she didn't want to foster the cat anymore. And so I took the cat to my house. And the beautiful thing was, to my surprise, it really took less than a week of Caesar slowly being introduced to my animals, and he was actually great. I was surprised. I expected it to take a lot longer than it did, but he was basically integrated with my cats and my dogs without any issues at all within a week. And then he ended up getting adopted. So you never know. But that is a very good point, Dory. Thank you for sharing. Jennifer says, my friend's advice was to only buy garbage bins with lids, and I'm sure that advice has saved me a lot of headache. Absolutely, Jennifer. It's another thing. I have people call me on the phone for dog training, and they'll say to me, my dog keeps getting into the garbage, and I want you to teach me how to have my dog not get into the garbage anymore. And you know what I say to them? I say, I'll tell you something. I will save you a lot of time, a lot of money and time of me coming out, and myself time from coming out, by telling you to buy garbage cans with lids or put your garbage away in a cabinet. And that will solve your problem. Because teaching a dog not to get into a garbage is ridiculous. It would be equivalent to teaching a 2 or 3-year-old that has just learned what candy is, putting candy at their level that they have full access to, and expecting that child not to go over and take that sucker and put it in their mouth. It's just not fair to the animal. So, I mean, you want to pick your battles, everyone, right? Just like with our children, with our human children, we want to pick our battles. What can we solve? What can we manage? What can we redirect? So very good advice. This is a good session, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Okay, does anybody have any other questions? As far as what we talked about so far, I've really only got about 10 more minutes, and I want to touch on one other thing that I have on my list to talk about today, and that is the differences between male and female dogs. You know, this is interesting, and it's something that I have observed by having, I am not kidding you, in my life, I have either owned or fostered hundreds of dogs. So I would say that my experience being a dog owner or foster mom far exceeds 99% of human beings on earth, except for people that are like me, and there's not a lot of us out there, okay? So I have a lot of experience between male and female dogs. And one thing I'll tell you from a logical standpoint, biologically, female dogs were made physically to actually bear children and to nurse those children, clean those children, care for those children for the first 8 weeks of their life. And they have to nurse them. They have to keep track of where they're at as well when they become mobile, pulling them back by them, making sure they're safe. So female dogs, by and large, my experience, and I liken it to the fact of that they were genetically made to bear children and raise children, is that they tend to be a little bit tighter than male dogs. They tend to be a little bit more dogs. If you're going to have, I always say, if you're going to have male and female dogs, if you have a female dog and you say to me, Sandy, should I get a male dog or should I get a female dog? I will tell you, your second dog ideally should be a male. If you have a male dog, I will tell you that you can get a male or a female. Typically speaking, 2 female dogs are going to be much more likely to fight than 2 male dogs. Male and female dog are typically a good mix. Of course, always spay and neuter your pets or your dogs, but that's been my experience. Male dogs have a tendency to be more lovey-dovey, mushy-gushy, kind of like big old babies their whole lives. Again, I'm giving you general rules. If you're talking about your specific dog and you say to me, well, I have a female dog that's really lovey-dovey, mushy-gushy. Okay, so maybe you do. But I'm saying in the hundreds of dogs that I have fostered and owned, that's been my general experience, is that the male dogs tend to be more touchy-wutchy, lovey, like they're the ones that are going to want to spoon sleep with you at night. They're the ones that are going to want to crawl in your lap and sleep even if they're 90 pounds. The female dogs tend to be a little bit more independent. The big thing that I've noticed with male dogs is that male dogs, the most annoying thing, I should say, is that some of them have a tendency to lift their leg and mark in the house, like pee spots in the house. And I would say that's the one thing I would caution people about, is just to be mindful of making sure that when you are working on housebreaking for your dog, if they're lifting their leg on trees and stuff, is that you count the number of trees and fire hydrants and bushes that your dog pees on, because it's going to take longer for them to empty their bladder than a female dog that just squats, and usually it's 1 or 2 pees. Again, general rules. I've known female dogs that think they can lift their leg and they pee on everything. But these are, again, general rules. For instance, I have the 2 dogs that are in here with me right now. Summer, she is more independent and more, she likes to be petted, but she's not crazy about hugs. She slept with me last night, but oftentimes she'll prefer to sleep on the floor. Where Cubby, a male dog, same age, he loves nothing more than to be just like enveloped in a hug and to sleep really close to me. So those are some of the things. And usually if you're going to have 2 dogs that are going to be aggressive towards each other, you're more likely going to have 2 female dogs than 2 male dogs. When it comes to certain breed types like pit bulls, for example, I would always 100% of the time recommend to people, of course, there's always exceptions to every rule. I would suggest to them that they get, if they have a female pit bull, I would recommend they get a male pit bull if they're going to get a second pit bull, or get a dog of a different breed. But again, get one of the opposite sex. Female dogs are going to be more likely to fight. I've seen it over and over and over in multiple household for the last, gosh, well, my whole life, but since I started Animal Education and Rescue in 2003, you know, I've had many, many, many that have come and gone. So those are kind of some interesting differences between male and female dogs. Of course, female dogs, they urinate, they can make your grass yellow in your yard compared to male dogs. Male dogs, they want to lift their leg outside on everything. Walking a female dog, they pee once, they empty their bladder, you know that they've gone potty. Male dogs, they have to lift their leg oftentimes many, many times before their bladder's empty. So those are some like practical, logistical things that I thought you might find interesting. So does anybody have any questions about their own dog at this point, or anything else before we call it a day? I am actually meeting a friend at Independence Grove Forest Preserve after this, and it looks like the sun is coming out, which I'm really happy about. And so I'm looking forward to my walk, and I have to leave pretty soon. But I do want to take a moment and answer any questions you have regarding anything we talked about, and I will, or anything new. I'll see if I can answer for you, and I'll give it a minute. Looks like I'm getting some texts from people as we're doing this. I am not seeing any questions. So, okay, I don't see any. Oh, let's see. I forgot I have to scroll down. Jennifer says, thanks for your time. Have a nice weekend. You too. It was really nice spending this time with you. Thank you, Jennifer, and all your comments and thoughts, and very, very good stuff. I appreciate it very much. Janet, thank you for spending the morning with me. And Karen, you are very welcome. And I am glad. I hope I taught you maybe a few things, and I hope you enjoy your weekend too. So I guess we're going to call it a day because nobody has any other questions for me. And I always take that as a sign that I gave enough information that that didn't require a lot of questions. Hopefully everything got answered for you and you learned a few things. I encourage you to please share this video, share this live for anybody that you know that has a dog or is thinking about getting a dog. Because this could potentially help them in some way. And my name is Sandy Kamen-Wisniewski, and I'm with Animal Education and Rescue, where we bring animals and people together through education, rescue, and therapy. And our website is aear.org. And I look forward to seeing you next time. And tune in tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Sunday night, as I share with you all of the adventures that we had this week at Animal Education and Rescue. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Bye.